righty. Hopefully everyone can see. All righty. So I am going to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Bowie. I'm an instructional specialist at McGrill Primary. I've been in education for 8 years. I've been at Jones, I've been at Griggs, and now I am at McGrill. And today I have the lovely Miss Frye. I'm gonna let Miss Frye introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Miss Frye or Emily Frye, and I am a kindergarten teacher at McGrill. I teach inclusion in ESL, and this is my 7th year doing that.
Awesome. So today we're talking about the phonological awareness continuum and the sounds first approach. And the main goal of this presentation is to focus on the auditory part, because when we are working with our students, we often forget some pieces. And so we want to go through the continuum to show you, okay, where do we need to go back and revisit if a student is struggling, things like that. And so it's auditory is just showing that these activities can be activities used as an exit ticket. They can be fun games to do with the whole group during transitions, anything like that to build those skills. All right, so we are going to go on a bit of a space adventure. In our cub, our participants will know the skills targeted in phonological awareness. Our participants will understand why and how we use the sounds first approach to teach these foundational skills. And participants will be able to effectively target phonological awareness skills in small group and in transitions using the sounds first approach. So why should the sounds come first? Why sounds first? So when babies grow into early childhood, we read these silly books to them that don't really make much sense, like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, There's a Rocket in My Pocket. We read these silly books. Why do we say things like scissors, zazzers, zoos, and glippity glup, and they don't make any sense. And somewhat it's uncomfortable to reading those words that don't make sense. Yet these silly sounds and word games are incredibly important for children on their journey to become readers. When we play with sounds, we're showing our children how they can play with words and make new words, real or pretend, by changing the sounds. So using a letter of the week or flashcards to match sounds to letters places more importance on the letter than the sounds. And this memorization does not help students to learn to read as quickly, and identifying letters as a single sound is not accurate. We have 26 letters in the alphabet, but 44 phonemes, basic sounds in the English language. So just memorizing the letters and the sound match does not actually work when they try to read. And so using the sounds first approach is helping them distinguish those differences in sounds so that they can more easily get acquainted to reading. So the auditory focus. Okay, we can focus on playing with sounds before learning letters in a variety of ways. Today, we'll explore the phonological awareness continuum and identify, model, and practice fun ways to manipulate sounds through a sounds first auditory approach. All right, so up first we have Miss Frye, and she's gonna go over rhyming.
Yeah, so if we look at the phonological awareness, we'll see that rhyming is at the top. It's the least complex. And rhyming is just a helpful first step towards that phonemic awareness. So when children play with rhymes, they are listening to the sounds within the words and identifying the word parts. So these are the stages of rhyming. Can you put the phases of rhyming in order? So we have produce, identify, recognize, and distinguish. What do you think would come first? All right, let's go to the next slide and see if you're right. So the stages of rhyming, the first thing is actually to recognize. Can you recognize and say rhyming words such as mouse, house? And then can you identify whether two words rhyme or do not rhyme? So if I say cat and dog, are they rhyming or not? And then can we distinguish between those two rhyming words from a group of 3 words? So if I say cat, dog, rat, which 2 words are rhyming? And then can we produce a word that rhymes with a set of rhyming words? So if I said pig, wig, can you give me another rhyming word? That'd be able to produce it. So recognizing is going to be the easiest, and then we're going to go all the way down to producing. So let's practice. So in this activity, the teacher or the person who you would like would just say a word, and then the next person would say a word that also rhymes. So you can keep going until it returns around. So for example, if I'm in a circle at my classroom, I could say, all right, pig, wig. Can you tell me another word that rhymes? And we can just keep going and see how many words rhyme. It's also a great opportunity to maybe use those nonsense words. So maybe someone said like lig instead of, pig or wig, and it still rhymes, and it's a nonsense word. It's not really a word we use every day, but it's still a rhyming word, and that's also the focus. Now you can do this also with a small group as well. So maybe not a big group, but you can go back to a small group as well. Sorry.
All right, so the next activity on the continuum is alliteration. Okay, similar to rhymes, alliteration helps emerging leaders predict what comes next and join into reading. So making the sounds in text fun also keeps young minds engaged. And so this is when we're identifying words with the same beginning sound, such as big, brown, bear. So let's check it out. So remember, when we're doing any of these activities, don't forget the gradual release, because we want to model for our kiddos what this looks like. So the I do, we do, you do. Okay, so in this activity, you can crank up a fun beat and chant words that begin with the same sound. Okay, after you provided a few words, giving them an example, then allow students to think of new words or chant that begins with the same sound. So for example, as I'm clapping to the beat, I may say, silly, 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 suit, 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 suit. And then the students would join in, and they would each have an opportunity to think of another word that begins with that same sound.
All right, so now we're on to sentence segmentation. And so that's just when we're going to orally with our words segment the sentences into the words that help children understand that sentences are composed of separate words and that they're in a particular order to convey meaning. So we're just counting words in a sentence. So I see a cat. There are 4 words. I see a cat. So making that distinction between the words as well. So let's practice. In this activity, I'm going to say a sentence, and I'm going to have the students clap as they repeat each word in that sentence, breaking it and segmenting it into the different words. And then you can ask how many words are in the sentence. So I would start kind of low in numbers, and you can like, I see a dog. I see a dog. You can also move it up, and maybe you want to do some snapping. I see a dog. Okay, how many words were in that sentence? How many times did we clap? How many times did we snap? So changing up that different motions are in helping students get more actively moving along to help with that sentence segmentation as well. And then when you get into longer words, that also helps. So like if you say popsicle, it's not popsicle, it's popsicle. So also making that connection as well. We're just talking about the words, not the actual syllables we're hearing.
So after the students have mastered the words, then we can focus on the syllables. And so that's breaking up the parts of a word into syllables. Syllable segmentation is very important for the development of a child's sound perception. A child who can recognize the syllables of a word will have an easier time reading and spelling. As kids get more familiar with syllables, they will notice syllable patterns in words. For example, Google and goggle both have the same syllable, gul, and will be able to split lengthier words down into their syllables to aid in syllabication. And so, of course, we want to focus on the sentence segmentation first, and then we can go into the syllable segmentation. So I'm going to show you a quick video. The students are not manipulating letters or print in this activity. The cards are blank, and it serves as a visual to support and assist the students in understanding that the words has different parts. Okay. So let's see. Get it started on the right part for you guys.
Blending and segmenting syllables is considered a precursor skill to phonemic awareness and letter sound
Can you
knowledge.
guys hear?
Blending syllables requires the students to put together syllables of a word that were spoken separately. For example, if the teacher says picnic, the students would say picnic. Segmenting syllables requires the students to break a spoken word into syllables. For example, if the teacher said table, the students would say table.
Ready? Okay, remember we've been talking about syllables, and syllables are parts of the word. Okay? Remember the words are broken down, so I want you to watch me. I'm going to say the word flower. Flower. Okay? Now, can you say flower? Flower. Okay, now we're going to break flower apart. Flower. Okay, now watch. Are you watching? I'm going to blend it back together. Flower. Okay. Great. Now let's read flower. Okay, now I'm going to let you try. Okay, so I'm going to give you the cards. I want you to line up the cards together. All right. Okay, so they're together. Ready? The word is monkey. Say monkey. Monkey. Okay, separate the word by syllable. Monkey. Okay, now blend it back together. Monkey. Okay, say turtle. Turtle. Okay, let's break it apart. Turtle. Okay, let's blend it back together. Great job. Let's try apple. Okay, let's blend it back together. Good job. Let's try the word puppet. First syllable, pup. Puppet. Okay, blend it back together. Puppet. Okay, and let's try. Wait, we're going too fast. Let's try again. First syllable, second syllable, full. Let's blend it back together. Okay, watch me. Apple. Apple. Let's try together. Ready? First syllable. Apple. Second syllable. Full. Blend it together. Good job. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty. So in that activity, let me get back to the screen. Sorry, guys. All right, there we go. So in that activity, the teacher was using the blank cards so the kids can have a visual. You see that she did it multiple times, and the kids had the exact number of cards for that syllable, for each syllable. And so they could practice breaking up those sounds. So eventually, of course, gradual release, the cards will eventually go away to where the students can just listen and break up the sounds. Do we have any questions about anything that we've seen so far?
There are no questions so far in the chat.
Okay.
Please feel free to write any questions down in the chat.
All right, so now we're talking about onset and rhyme. And so that's just blending and segmenting the initial sound, the onset, from the vowel and consonant sounds, which is the rhyme that comes after it. So the onset is the initial phonological unit of any word. So like the k and cat. And the term rhyme refers to the string of letters that follow. So it's usually a vowel and the final consonant sounds. So like the at in cat. Now, not all words have onsets, and similar to teaching beginning readers about rhyme, teaching children about onset and rhyme helps them recognize the common chunks within the words. So this can help students decode new words when reading and spelling words when writing. So this game is just I Spy, and you can use the room around you. You could use a picture like the one I have here, and you can just say, I spy a pig. And then the students would say pig, and then they get to spy. So it's also not only looking for the picture, but it's making those connections and blending those sounds together. So again, we could look at them and say, okay, from that picture, I spy a cow, cow. Then you could also go and do the segmenting where the roles are reversed and the students would break apart the word for you to figure out what they're saying using the room around you or the picture. So they would do the same thing. I spy a barn. So again, it's that initial onset with the ending sounds together. So it's not breaking it into each individual sound, but instead an initial with the ending.
Alrighty, so far we've gone through rhyme, alliteration, sentence segmentation, syllable segmentation, and onset and rhyme. And so all of these skills that we've been targeting, we've only done it auditorily, only verbally, to where we're not showing them letters, we're not putting sentences together that we're asking them to read. We're just asking them to listen to the sounds and distinguish the sounds. As you guys noticed, when we first jumped into for kinder, when we first started the skills unit, we're listening for environmental noises. And so our students have to be able to distinguish the different sounds that they hear. So if they are not able to distinguish different sounds, they are going to continue to struggle through this continuum. And so you have to make sure that you're revisiting some of this, especially if it's a struggling student. It doesn't always have to be where they are practicing chaining folders or anything like that. Yes, we want them to get to that more complex skill, but if they haven't got those foundational skills first, it's going to be very difficult for them. And so all of these activities are quick activities, on the go activities. They're great for transitions. They're great for exit tickets. So they're really quick and they're easy to share with families as well. It's easy to help parents understand what you're asking them to do, because we're not asking them to make anything. We're not asking them to print anything. It's strictly oral games that we are playing with the kiddos so they can build these foundational skills. And so once they take care of those less complex skills, they can move into the more complex skill of phonemic awareness. And that's the ability to identify and manipulate individual sounds, phonemes, in spoken words. There are 6 layers that increase with complexity, and we're going to take a dive into that next. Before children learn to read print, they need to become aware of how the sounds and words work. They must understand that words are made up of speech sounds or phonemes. Okay, and that is the main thing that we're stressing here, is to make sure that they have to understand the auditory part first before we jump into the fluency of, okay, let's name all these letters, let's name all these sounds. They have to be able to distinguish it first. All right, so looking at phonemic awareness, the ability to identify and manipulate individual phonemes, the smallest units of sounds, in a spoken word that make a difference in the word meaning. For example, changing the first phoneme in the word hat from to p changes the word from hat to pat. And so that changes the meaning. A letter between slash marks shows the phoneme or the sound, and that letter represents, and it's not the same, not the name of the letter. So for example, letter H represents the sound. And so in the phonemic awareness continuum, from less complex to more complex, we have isolation is the first one. So that's isolating the individual phonemes into words, their initial, final, and medial sound. Okay, so that's when we're saying the word hat. Now, often in our curriculum, we use our hands or our fingers to where we're breaking that sound up to where we can identify the first sound, the middle sound, and the last sound. Okay, then we move into blending, and that's listening and pulling together isolated phonemes to create a word. So for example, put these sounds together. S, and so we bring that together to form the word sun. And so again, can you guys see how those previous activities can build to this activity? So if our students are struggling right now where we are in the units, in CKLA, if they're struggling with blending, there are some activities that we can go back and visit to ensure that they're able to distinguish those sounds, they're able to isolate those sounds so they can be successful readers. Okay, so after blending, we move into segmentation. So that's dividing a word into individual phonemes. What sounds do you hear in the word bug? G, right? That's one of our assessments, right? Our PSF segmenting those sounds. And so again, all of these previous activities support that. So if we are jumping into segmenting sounds and we forget some of those prerequisite skills, our students are going to struggle. And so if we are finding our kids struggling with some of this stuff right now, we have to take that trip back down the continuum to see where did they get off at, okay? Then we move into addition, adding phonemes to a given word to produce a new word, all right? So say ed, then add r to the beginning. What's the new word? Fun games that we can just do auditorily. Do we have to have this written out on cards and putting them together? Do we have to use Elkin boxes to get them to practice these activities? No, not initially. We want them to hear it first, all right? Then after addition, we move into deletion. That's removing a phoneme from a word to produce a new word. So listen to the word hit, hit. Take away the what's left, it. In this activity, both the addition and the deletion of sounds is a very difficult activity for our students if they are struggling with attention. If they are struggling to listen, this is a very difficult activity for them. You have to have their full attention. You have to make it engaging. And so using a game format is the best way to practice these activities with the kiddos, okay? And then the last and most complex is substitution. That's replacing a phoneme in a word to produce a new word, all right? And that's what we call chaining. That's what we do in CKLA called chaining. We listen to the word hat, change the H to, change the H to P. The new word is pet. And then you continue where you're manipulating those sounds by changing the phonemes, all right? And that's what we're doing in CKLA with chaining, right? Now, Ms. Frye, I know you're in the classroom doing the different chaining activities. Would you like to speak on that in the phonemic awareness continuum?
Yeah, so the chaining activity is really going to take all of those steps that we've talked about, and it's really going to break it down. And as you have seen in the CKLA skills, we're really starting with the basic and then moving more to the complex. So even the way we're asked to prompt the students of like, okay, you know, this word's hat, change the h to p. Then we go on to, okay, this word's hat, how could I make it pat? You know, really asking those students those questions for them to manipulate those sounds. And then now we're currently doing, you know, those consonant clusters. So again, that's a whole nother level of using those sounds, their knowledge of those sounds, the placement of them. And it all is starting back from that very beginning. It's all just going to keep building on itself. And so that way they can get to that actual substitution and then physically manipulating of the sounds. But if they cannot hear it, then that's where they're going to struggle because they're not making that connection between what that letter and that sound, those phonemes are representing. So it's really important just to keep building off of it and going back and keep practicing so students are able to use them and use them well. So
yes. All right, and so now we want to give you guys an opportunity to share some of the things that you have seen in relation to these continuums. Have you noticed that your students are more successful when they've had the opportunity to practice these skills? Are you coming into situations to where you're like, okay, why is my student struggling now? And where you can go back and find it in the continuum. So we really want you to use this opportunity to unmute your mics and talk to us so we can have some dialogue about sounds first approach, because we know this was a difficult transition for us, for some of us, when we first got the CKLA curriculum, because we were so used to teaching the letter of the week and things like that, which is very important because we know we're assessed on our letter knowledge. But as far as getting our students to read, the sounds first approach is the most important part. So feel free, please unmute your mics and let us know, give us some feedback. Tell us what you're seeing in your classroom.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yes, I have two students that are very high functioning. I'm in what we call in HISD a PALS class, which is a classroom for early childhood participants, pre-K through K, and some verbally challenged. I mean, communicatively challenged. And that being the case, the two students that are functioning on a high level have other issues, but they can actually do quite a bit of what you're describing. So it's not them I'm mostly talking about. They're basically models for me if we can get the other students to participate, which is where the problem actually is, because of the different levels of disabilities they have with verbal engagement. So that's kind of, it's unique, not unique to teachers like myself, but it's probably unique to teachers that don't have to face it.
Yes. Yes, there are definitely different levels. And so you said that you had several students that were very strong and able to do most of this. And so that's when we can add in that student ownership and they can lead in these activities, because sometimes, students are learning just by watching the other students, just by listening to the other students. And so it may take a little while longer, it may take a lot of repetitiveness, but using these activities and making sure that you're doing it in a fun, engaging way, singing those silly songs, silly rhyming songs, silly alliteration songs, those things are going to hone in on their attention, getting them engaged in what they're doing, and utilizing your higher students to do that as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Miss Bowie, you do have some comments in the chat. I don't know if you have it open and you want to read them, or do you want me to read them to you?
Oh, could you read them? I don't have it
Sure.
open.
So Sean Bay shared that that cat to bat, sometimes students will mix up the letters to BTA. And then there's another comment, we tap out the sounds, but my students say the incorrect medial and end sounds. And then sometimes Sean Bays has them go back and resound out the words.
Mm-hmm. These are very repetitive activities. They're very repetitive. You have to do them multiple times. It's definitely not a one and done. They're great for warm-ups. They're great for transitions, because you have to do it over and over for them to get used to it, to understand it. And oftentimes they will mix up those sounds. We even see it now where we're doing blending activities, and the student can tell you all the sounds in the word, but when it's time for them to produce the word, they say something completely different. You may tell them to blend the word bat, and they say car. They say something completely different. And so again, it's going back into that to that practice and focusing on what they are hearing, because a lot of times they're saying it, but they're really not processing it. And so you have to continue with that repetitiveness and going down that continuum. Ms. Frye, did you have anything for that? I know you deal with students that may struggle with the blending portion of the lesson.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a lot of repetitiveness and like doing the same thing, where maybe for you seem like, okay, I've done it 10 times, we'll do it 10 more. Like there really is going to be a big reward from it. But then also I've noticed that, especially in my small groups, of using those manipulations of not the letter names, but like the cards, or maybe even like a piece of Play-Doh that you're pushing down, something where they're making that connection of first, next, or even first, next, last. Sometimes that helps as well, because they have all those sounds up here, but they need to get them in order. So sometimes just having those visual representations of not the letters, but something to manipulate, I've noticed that also can sometimes help them of just keeping them in a line, keeping them in order somehow.
And there was one more comment in the chat where Amy Johnson stated, when isolating sounds, some students are have a harder time identifying the beginning and middle sound, instead always giving the final sound, and it's the last sound they said for the word.
And so that's where the manipulatives, like Ms. Frye was talking about, comes into play, because then they are distinguishing it. Just like we saw in the video, they're able to identify. The video showed them doing it with syllables, but you can also do it with the isolation, to where they're identifying which sound is which. And so just by them looking at that blank piece of paper or that blank sticky note, they can correlate that, okay, that first sticky note is the sound, that one, the next one is the middle sound, and they're able to see it as well. And then you use that gradual release and eventually take it away. If students are, I have one teacher, I saw her use this strategy to where when her students were blending sound, the very first thing she asked them to do was identify the vowel and tell me that sound. And so they would identify that middle sound first, and then they'll read the whole word together. And it was nothing that I had ever seen before. And I didn't, I was like, that's a bit of a different way of doing it, but it was very effective. Once they could identify that vowel sound, that medial sound, they could read the word pretty effectively. And so that's another strategy that I hadn't seen before, but it proved to be highly effective in the way that she was doing it. Do you guys have any other best practices that you would like to share since we have this forum?
Someone mentioned the picture video devices, if anyone else uses them. And then there was a comment about the cards that they love, the 3 cards in a row, 4 cards in a row. And then do you use them as exit or entrance tickets?
It could be both. I've seen it to where as students are coming in from lunch, the cards are posted, or the word, or either the teacher just does it orally. She'll give them the word and then they break up the sound and they go into classroom. And so that could be entrance or exit, however you want to use it. There's so many different ways to use these activities. And the kids really like, especially the alliteration and the rhyming activities. I've always liked to use the riddles. I'll tell them, give me a word that rhymes with chair. This morning I got dressed and I had to fix and then the students would have to produce the word. And so they're silly little rhymes, but they're listening for those similarities. Okay, do we have anyone else want to share? All right. So do you guys have any questions?
There's another comment in the chat box. It says, do a song beforehand. I have a cat who loves his hat, so he sat in his hat.
Yes, they like those activities, especially the ones like Willoughby Wallaby Woo, where they have to finish the rhyme. Those are all great activities. We do them a lot in pre-K, but they are great activities for kinder as well as warm-ups and, just fun activities to where they can, get engaged for a bit as we transition.
Yeah, and I would say too, a lot of those songs, like in kindergarten, for example, our school, we don't have bathrooms in the room. So when we're at the bathroom, a lot of those, that's a great time to be using some of those fun songs. And especially when you get their names involved, like we would tap out the syllables for their name, or, oh, I see someone, Ali, who is that? Oh, it's Emily, and they think that's so fun to look around and see if they can figure out whose friend's name is being involved. So, just getting their interest, and it doesn't have to be something that takes a whole lot of time. Even just lining up for lunch. Okay, this person get in line, just making it a fun game. So,
and the great thing about these activities, again, is you can easily turn them over to parents. It's not anything they have to prepare. You can just teach them the little silly song. You can teach them the little rhymes to where they can practice at home. You can teach them when they go into the grocery store. We're looking for something that starts with this sound. We're looking for something that starts with B. Different things like that. Oh, we're gonna go find bread. We need bread. So any of those little activities that you can turn over to parents to where they can support what we're doing at home. At school, it helps. And that way it can keep the students engaged. And remember to use those higher students, because they like those activities too, and they can lead. They are able to lead. So you have to kind of relinquish some of that control and let them lead, because they're very capable. And that's that student ownership piece. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any more questions, I know it went pretty quickly. We were hoping for some more dialogue, but you have our information here. Our email addresses, mine is kjbowie@aldineisd.org, and my Twitter is KimberlyBowie11. And so reach out if you have any questions. And of course, Ms. Frye.
Yes, and mine is elwhitman@aldineisd.org or at Kinderfries as well on Twitter.
And I'm resubmitting, someone's saying it's the wrong form. I'm putting it in again for the 1 o'clock session. Hopefully it's the right one.
Thank you.
We know how important our foundational skills are for all our students, and that's the important part of beginning with our young ones, readers, or any age student. So we appreciate this presentation as far as the foundational skills, and we know it's part of our literacy framework as well. So we appreciate you, Ms. Frye and Ms. Bowie. Thank you for presenting to us today. You had a pretty big crowd, so I hope everyone in our session received some great ideas, great information, and hopefully the chat, hopefully the link in the chat is correct now. So don't forget to fill that out, and you have their information if you need any, have any questions. And the next session will start at 2 o'clock.
Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you.